If I told you I was about to drive a car with 616 brake horsepower, that could do 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, that had 590 pound-foot of torque, that weighed over 2.5 tons, but could still do speeds up to and including 200 miles an hour, but was still whisper quiet, well, surely you'd tell me I was mad. Well, not so, because I've got this, the new Bentley Flying Spur. This is the second generation of the modern Flying Spur. The previous generation was closely linked to the Continental GT and was dubbed the Continental Flying Spur. This car has ditched the Continental. It's no longer seen as a bigger version of everyone's favourite GT. No, this is a proper limousine, a proper luxury saloon. It's a car that shows not only that you're doing well for yourself, but you're doing so well, you may as well have a driver. First things first though, what do we think of the look? You can certainly tell that the new Flying Spur is a car with purpose and that some serious craftsmanship has gone into it. For example, the front wings are made from one single piece of metal. It gives it much more style, much better form, much more elegance, and they're probably an utter sod to fix in a crash. Also, the headlamps, again borrowed from the Continental GT but swapped round, so the big ones on the outside to give the car more presence. They're set into that piece of metal, just so to give it that perfect look, and they sit in their own flattened area rather than being part of the bonnet to differentiate it from the Continental GT. But then that single piece wing gives way to one shoulder line that runs all the way to sit just above the rear lights. Now, rather than you get in the Continental GT, they're not stacked but more put into one single wide unit. That gives the rear of the car way more presence than before. But those lines also sit above some pretty muscle car-esque haunches like you used to get in the 70s. And those haunches allude to its performance, and then some. Up front, things are pretty much the same as the Continental GT, which is lovely. All the toys are in the same place, all the wood is all shiny and pretty, it's all absolutely beautiful, and you even get that winged bee inspired dash, which is why it sort of swoops in and goes down and then ensconces the driver in the cabin as a proper cockpit style affair. But in the back is where things get luxurious and very, very high tech. You can have 10-inch screens in there, you can have Wi-Fi, there's inputs for SD cards, USB, all that kind of stuff. And if you only have 2 children, you can have 2 captain's chairs in there which you can recline and have a good snooze in. Bentley's also introduced a little remote control that you can control your seat temperature with, the aircon in there, you can control your media. Similarly, you can have a look at the speedo like you could in Bentleys of old, and that's pretty cool if I'm honest. All in all, it's the kind of place you could make country-changing decisions from, as one would expect from the back seat of a big B. Craftsmanship is at the fore here, as you'd expect from a Bentley. A car like this though has to be 2 things. It has to be good to drive and very, very comfortable, and I'll start with the comfort. Good Lord, this thing is so unbelievably smooth. Not only to drive but to sit in. The seats are very comfy. There's 2 levels of foam, so it's firm to start with, and then as your arse sort of settles in, you sink down a little more. Your seats can be heated and cooled at the same time, which is pretty amazing if I'm honest, and very comfortable if a little disconcerting from time to time. There are various suspension settings. You can go from comfort all the way up to sport, and comfort is, as you'd expect, very, very comfortable. Apparently this is about 13% softer than the old car, and it's great for in town because the steering's nice and light, even though it is adaptive. So what that means is when you're going less than 30 miles an hour it's nice and light, but if you start going a little faster it weighs itself up a little bit, because you have to remember this is a 200 mile an hour car, and if you are going to do that kind of speed you don't really want easy steering, you want it to be a little bit tauter. The real highlight of this car is its engine. It's a 6-litre W12, 2 turbos on it, 616 brake horsepower, and its turn of pace is simply astonishing. You nail your foot and all of a sudden this barge lurches upwards as you fire yourself forward to the horizon. It's this relentless speed, and you can get up to any speed limit pretty instantly. I mean, 0 to 60 happens in 4.3 seconds, 70 appears not long after that. 0 to 100 miles an hour in this is 9.5 seconds. Now that's only a little bit more time than it takes a Mini Cooper to get to 62. That's quite quick. The thing about this car that really does get me is I don't actually think it's a limousine. Bentley says it's a limousine, but actually it's a really well-appointed muscle car. I mentioned earlier the big haunches at the back, which give this epic stance. And then you add in the giant engine with all of the power and a little bit of noise and drama, and the suspension, even in sport mode, when you accelerate, it kind of lifts the front end as the momentum pushes the 2.5 tons forward, but of course physics takes over and it lifts itself up. It is a muscle car, but with really nice seats in it. Really nice seats. So then, what do we make of Bentley's latest? Is it a hit or a very well-appointed miss? Come on, what do you think? It's a brand spanking new Bentley. Of course it's brilliant.